Good morning, good evening, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you might be doing. We wish to welcome you to the Silverlight Show. The Silverlight shines to illuminate that which lies hidden in darkness. For those of you tuning in today, we welcome you in. Well, that was a heck of an exciting weekend in sports, wasn't it? Normally, sports don't really register on my radar. I paid attention because I will admit there's a few sports podcasts that catch my interest. And I noticed the perfect way everything lined up this weekend. The Pittsburgh Steelers needed Indianapolis to lose and Las Vegas to do anything but tie for them to advance to the playoffs. Miraculously, Indianapolis loses to the worst team in the league, and Las Vegas is tied right to the very second overtime, with however many overtimes they go to, and then they score at the last minute to make sure Las Vegas and Pittsburgh both get into the playoffs. Why is this worthy of our attention? Very simple. Because Las Vegas and Pittsburgh are huge markets for the NFL. Pittsburgh is one of the oldest teams in the NFL, and Las Vegas just moved there from Los Angeles. And without those teams there, eyes will not be on their product, especially in Las Vegas. And Pittsburgh are a bunch of homers. That's no offense to them. Having lived in Toronto for as long as I have, I know that Toronto people are big Toronto Maple Leaf homers. That is, they only care about the Leafs, they don't care about anything else, and it's the same triumph and tragedy. When they lose, it's the end of the world, they're going to be gone tomorrow, trade everybody, fire all the coaches, start anew. When they win, we won, we're going all the way to the championship, except we got to fire all the coaches and trade all the players. And it's the same thing every single game. Fans like this are important. You want people to be passionate about your product. And the NFL and NHL and NBA have all achieved this. Major League Baseball, well, they have their passion, but at the same token, it's not the same kind of sport. It's more traditional, it's more reserved. The young people are mostly going for the NBA, and the NHL has its hardcore fans, but the NFL, they're the ones with the big broadcast deals. They sit back, do virtually nothing, and they get paid billions, if not trillions of dollars per year. It's hard really to quantify the makeup of how much the NFL earns in a year, because it's not just the TV deal, but every jersey that's sold, a certain amount of that goes to the league and to every other team. For most stadiums, let me correct that, every time you buy a beer or popcorn or anything in the stands, even the ticket that you buy, a certain amount goes to the league, a certain amount goes to the other team that plays. The funny thing is the NFL, that is supposedly the hallmark of capitalism in the United States, is actually a very socialist system. They have revenue sharing. It's not as good as it could be, but at the same token, it's amazing what they do. The Green Bay Packers are actually a community-owned team, which means the community owns them. And yeah, you want to talk about communism right there? That's the very definition. Communism, communal. And the city owns them. The shares aren't worth anything, but the same token, people can point to them with pride and say, I am a 1 in, say, 60,000th owner of the Green Bay Packers. So the NFL has a responsibility to itself to make sure that it keeps growing. I bring this up because sandwich and all this drama over the weekend, let's call it engineered drama for now, because it's very peculiar. Indianapolis decided to crap out in Jacksonville the way that they did, and it was a brutal crushing. I was watching a couple podcasters because I find their reactions more entertaining than the game itself. And I used to play a little bit of football at very junior levels. So I enjoy the game, but the NFL level is just not my cup of tea. Let me clarify, if you invited Silverlight over and we were watching TV and the ball game came on, I would not ask you to turn it off. First of all, I'm not that type of person. And secondly, yeah, once in a while I'll watch a game. But outside of this Cinderella story, you see, it was purposely done that way to keep people's interest on the product on the field. Because off the field, an interesting drama is taking place. Who owns the rights to the name New York? The NFL has two teams in New York, the New York Giants and the New York Jets. Well, supposedly they represent New York. You see, the teams actually play in a stadium in New Jersey. And New York is suing them, saying, you don't have the right to our name because you don't play here. And it's an interesting dichotomy. You see, the former Boston Patriots got around that by naming themselves the New England Patriots. And New England is like Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and I forget what the third one is. It's a whole area in there. So they can pretty much move around and not have any repercussions. Whereas the New Jersey-based teams claiming to represent New York, neither the Jets or the Giants are actually playing in New York for their home games or away games. New York is taking an interesting tactic. You see, about 15, 20 years ago, no, it's more than that. It was before the 2000s. It was in the 90s when the Cleveland Browns decided to move. The city of Cleveland had to petition for their name to be left behind because they wanted their next sports team to be named the Browns. Which, okay, I get it. You know, brand loyalty, you want it. When the Ravens moved, I forget who they were before they were the Browns became the Ravens. Yeah, there was another team that moved in that time. I forget who it was. And this whole, Los Angeles rebranding and stuff like that, I can't keep track of it other than the Chargers and the Rams are in LA now and the Raiders are now in Las Vegas. It's very convoluted. But New York has decided that their name rights are worth $6 billion. That is an interesting figure, and it has a lot of ramifications. First of all, everybody knows New York is the Big Apple, the biggest, if not the second biggest city in the United States, depending how you want to rank Los Angeles. And it's called the city that never sleeps for a reason. And believe me, its lawyers do not sleep. They've probably been putting this case together for a couple of years quietly, and we're only hearing about it now. Or rather, you hear about it if you listen for interesting things. What I'm wondering is how far this could go if it's established as a precedent. Now, I think New York's going to win. I don't think they're going to win $6 billion worth because you have to prove damages, you have to prove loss. A lawsuit is really a beast all of its own. Maybe one day I'll cover that because people can just think, oh, anybody can sue for anything. Well, that's true, but to have any real chance of the judge not laughing you out of court, you have a lot of things to prove. And New York, like I said, first of all, has to prove damages are happening because these teams are playing New Jersey. Well, they can say that the stadium rights are not being paid to them. This is true. Whatever concessions and taxes, whatever they would have made off, because remember, not only does the NFL take a share, the team takes a share, but the state takes a share, and that money is all going to the state of New Jersey, not to the state of New York. And since the New York Giants have been around since the 30s and the New York Jets since the 60s, I don't know when their latest stadium was put up. Let's pretend it's 20 years because it's probably a lot longer than that. That's a lot of missed tax revenue. So damages, they can already prove. As far as, psychological trauma, all those intangibles, that's going to depend on the lawyers. But in terms of lost revenue and damages, they got this one in the bag. So how else can we start using this? Let's take Chrysler, for example. I don't know why I always pick on Chrysler, because GM is pretty much the exact same thing as a photocopy, except GM is slightly worse in my opinion, which is probably why I don't pick on them as much, because they're not my favorite people. I'm not trying to show my own personal influences in this program. I try to be very dispassionate. But okay, GM and Chrysler have plants all over the place. Let's just take Ontario, for example. They both have plants in Ontario. Let's just say Chrysler in Brampton decides to move. Does that now mean, does New York's lawsuit mean that cities can start suing? Because these people are coming in from wherever they represent, be it Chrysler, be it McDonald's, and they're saying to City Council, hey, we bring in this amount of benefit to your city. This many jobs, this much tax revenue, this much whatever it is. So in return, we want the following concessions. Free electricity. Don't be surprised. This happens a lot more than you think. They want free, sewage, water lines coming in and out. Even though they use more than most of the residents, they get it for free. And it's going to be interesting because all these businesses that are currently living off the hog for free, if they decide to shut down, the city's just going to turn around and say, yep, and you're going to pay us all these damages. I think this would be a very good development in the courts if it comes true. We're still a long ways from it, but it's worth watching. Imagine if cities could sue all those businesses. Now, your local little local manufacturer who only deals in one type of button that they sell on eBay and Etsy and wherever the heck it is, these people are not going to be affected. This is directly going to affect the globalist multinational corporations that think that they're safe behind their billions of dollars and high-priced lawyers. But New York is the one place that actually has the billions of dollars and the lawyers to fight back. And they stand to gain millions, if not billions. When you start talking that kind of money, it's funny what becomes worth people's time. So this is a case to watch. It's not going to resolve itself in a year because they're going to go to every appeal process they can think of, both sides. And yeah, it would be interesting to say what's in a name. Like the New York Jets represent New York in theory. But what is that name New York worth as compared to New Jersey? If you live in the area, obviously means something. Toronto and Hamilton have a long rivalry. They're an hour away. You can drive from one to the other and never have a place that you cannot drop off the highway, get a cup of coffee, and see local sites, whatever they may be. There's a trail that you can take, a bicycling trail, a hiking trail if you're a little ambitious. You can walk from one to the other. These are not far apart places. It's the same with New York and New Jersey. They're pretty much the same thing. But what is a name? If a Toronto team relocated to Hamilton, or if a Toronto business relocated to Hamilton, which is actually a big thing. Toronto businesses are moving out to Milton because Milton is promising, yes, we have new infrastructure, new everything, and we're going to give you this, that, the other thing. And they're leaving older places like, Brampton, Vaughan, although Vaughan, they're actually building new infrastructure still. Mississauga, their infrastructure is getting a little old. And they're saying, hey, you just move a couple streets down and we got a new business megaplex. So really all these people do is play cities off against each other. It'll be nice to see a new avenue for taking the fight back to them. Now, whoever you root for in the playoffs, I hope they do very well. Because after all, it's spectacle for the sake of spectacle. I don't mind it. It's one of the more harmless things. At the same token, that's what I'm going to say. It's spectacle for the sake of spectacle. But I still do not understand how a team with a weak offensive line tries to run a one-back formation in a major game. That does not make sense. See, I know the game. I know it very well. Enough of the sports talk. Probably won't be a reason to talk about it again until I get around to researching Super Bowl, which is coming up. But for those of you who enjoyed this show, we hope you We hope you leave a like, share, thumbs up, buy the merchandise, link in the description, and we hope you have a fantastic day.